PURE TOKYOSCOPE
Hello and welcome to episode 129 of the PURE TOKYOSCOPE Podcast. I am Patrick Macias, the author of the book Mondo Tokyo, and I'm Matt Alt. Just kidding, Matt is actually not on this episode. He is on Planet X right now, investigating some recent magnetic disturbances, but he will be back next week as usual for our show. This week we present a special interview with Mr. Justin Sevakis of OCD Media, who does DVD and 4K and Blu-ray, authoring, production, and restoration for anime and Japanese film live-action titles from Discotek, as well as his own company, AnimEigo. And Justin is also the mastermind behind a new series called The Anime Business, in which he interviews old-school anime industry peeps, so definitely check that out on YouTube. In the meantime, please enjoy our interview with Justin Sevakis. Justin, I think the first time we met, this is my memory, it was an Anime Expo, maybe 1999 or 2000, when they were still having it at, what was that, the Disneyland Hotel?
I think that was the last year it was there.
That sounds about right. And we were just in the lobby, me and downtown Uriah Brown, and we just started talking and chatting. We didn't really know who was Zentradi, who was Meltrandy. We didn't really know any of that stuff. We just started talking. And I also have like a kind of a suppressed memory of that same Anime Expo of Nobuo Ishiguro, the anime director of Yamato and Macross, giving foot rubs in a hotel room during a con party.
Oh, that's weird. No, I have no memory of that.
And I don't remember if we even talked about this. Like, what is your anime fan origin story? What brought you to that last Anime Expo at Disneyland in the first place?
Wait a minute, what year was that? Because I didn't start at Central Park Media until late 2000. It might have been Long Beach. To answer your question, I was one of the people that caught the bug from the early VHS era. The family was at Blockbuster Video when I was 13, and I saw that single shelf of the handful of anime that they just stocked at every store in, the suburban Detroit area. And I was just like, what is this? Why are the girls in bikinis? Why does this look vaguely sexual? This is all so mysterious. I must know more. And my mom was like, those have the youth restricted viewing sticker. Nuh-uh, you're not getting that. So of course I had to have it. Luckily, a friend of my sister had bought a pirated VHS tape at Motor City Comic Con of one of the first tapes I wanted to see, which was the dub of Project A-ko. And my mom watched like the first 5 minutes of it, and she's like, yeah, it's fine. It was unlike anything I'd ever seen. That started the ball rolling. I then checked out Harmageddon, which I almost walked away after that.
Oh, no, I'm pro Harmageddon, for the record.
Okay, sure. Then Dominion Tank Police, and then, the Rummick Worlds, and then it was just downhill from there. It was a spiral. And then by the time I got to high school a couple years later, there was a couple of upperclassmen trying to start an anime club, and so I fell in with them. And by the time I was in junior year, I was fan subbing in my bedroom on an old Amiga 2000. Ironically, the titles I was most well known for fan subbing were Kodocha, Kodomonomocha, and the Megazone trilogy. Almost all these titles I'd end up working on again later.
Were you involved in any of the fan subber wars? Did you leave spicy subtitles, telling other people to go stick their head in a microwave oven or anything like that?
It never made it into my product. I had a lot of pride in the work I was doing, and I was just like, I can make this look really good. I can make it look professional. But online, I was a teenager. There was drama. I dare not go back and look at some of those old fan sub mailing list posts because
we were bad boys. Yeah, that scene kind of encouraged that sort of loudish behavior, I think.
Yeah, just the constant dick measuring. I'm just, are you happy you're not that age anymore?
Parts of me are, parts of me aren't, if that makes sense.
I don't know. My life has gotten a lot better since then.
I miss the smallness of the scene back then. And also, I think what I missed the most was the fact that I felt at that time that anime was like really ascending. Like it was every couple of years, there were these giant incremental leaps in quality. From like 1972 to 1992, there was like a hot streak of just the product always evolving and getting better. You know, you go from like Gatchaman to like Akira or like Ghost in the Shell Innocence. Like I miss that. I feel like we've been in kind of a sameness since the CG digital era in terms of just like the evolution of the product.
I agree on a number of levels. I feel like that's true across just kind of everything right now, as far as technology, as far as society in general.
Sure, music, movies, you know.
Yeah, we're all just kind of like, okay, now we have everything everywhere all at once, and it is not making us any happier. In fact, it kind of sucks. What do we do now?
Well, we teach the children to go back and watch Vampire Princess Miyu.
That's kind of my next chapter in life is trying to keep the cool stuff alive and figure out what, hidden treasures still lurk under the surface of the various licensor catalog. I'm not going to lie, there's a lot to be done.
There's a finite amount of anime available, right? They're not making new old anime. I mean, what's going to happen? And how far are we to reaching the absolute bottom of the barrel? And it's like the Sazai-san Ultimate Collection Blu-ray box.
Oh, man, I would sell maybe a dozen of those. There's actually quite a bit left. The problem is that all of the old favorites are taken, but that doesn't mean that there aren't any great things left. The big problem is that the stuff that's left, nobody knows about in the Western world, and nobody in the Japan industry seems to know about them either. So it's going to take some real excavation work and some real marketing. I mean, just going back to 2004, we're just coming out with our Blu-ray of Nasu, Summer in Andalusia, and, that was kind of hybrid digital analog, and it looks great, but it was 47 minutes long, and it never got a proper release in the States, and people literally don't know it exists. And it's this awesome animated at Madhouse of old with the former animation director behind, most of the Studio Ghibli output from the 90s and early 2000s at the helm. And it's this great film, and you just have to get it in front of people, because once they see it, it clearly is amazing. And it's just kind of coming up with new ways to punch through the noise. That's the hard part.
I have been sort of, I wouldn't say surprised, but when I first started coming in as like an anime professional doing like Otaku USA in the early 2000s, it was really hard to get people interested in the old stuff. The consensus seemed to be anything that was like more than 6 months to a year old was real old and just beneath their contempt. And then slowly but surely, I don't know, what are the demographics like for this generation of younger fan interested in the old stuff?
It's all over the place. I've been working with Discotek Media for a little over a decade now. And, we've been able to really grow that brand from, literally the owner Selby working the table at the convention by himself with his wife. And we've really managed to get that to like, literally we have 3,000 people showing up for our live streams live, and then another 10,000 watching later. And this is literally just us talking over a PowerPoint. I mean, this is not really huge.
Like you're not massaging anyone's feet, for example.
I mean, maybe a few. The thing is, so, you go to the conventions, you go to the panels, and you see the people that are coming. It spans the gamut. You have the old timers like us, the people that we came up with, but also you have a shocking number of younger fans across all, genders and ethnicities. And it's like, it is people largely that got into anime, know that there's good stuff out there, but there's definitely a feeling that the good stuff happened a long time ago. And so there's kind of this like, we need to unearth the classics and figure those out sort of feeling to them.
Do you ever ask them why aren't they watching like an isekai show or something like that? Like, what's wrong with these people?
Do we really have to ask?
I guess not. You mentioned Discotek Media, and
yeah.
We haven't really talked about your transition from fan to pro and how that happened, if you wanted to go back a little bit. Because when we last left off in the timeline, you were watching Project AIKO and then fan subbing, which is illegal, if I need to remind you.
I know. I will be hauled to jail at some point. But so the story goes that I was graduating high school, and I didn't have great grades. I was kind of a B+ student. student at a much better than average high school, and that was not able to get me into the school that I wanted to go to at the time. And so I was going to go to the school for dunces. You're in Michigan, you don't think that far about like leaving Michigan. So I didn't have many options. And so I was really frustrated at the time because there was no way to tell what was happening, what was coming out. Like there was just no way to know anything. You remember these days, you had to go to the news groups and, what was true and what was just something that somebody pulled out of their ass. You could not tell truth from fiction. So I started Anime News Network. I started that out of just basically knowing that I'd be bored out of my mind and I needed something to do there. And that seemed to be something that needed to exist. So I literally hand coded it in HTML in my dorm room, occasionally running down to the school computer lab. And I lasted one semester there and I took a gap year, and then my parents convinced me to move to New York City. And I did. And I immediately knew that was the right move because the week I got there, Perfect Blue hit theaters. And I'm just like, yes. And then literally a couple weeks go by and there's the 35 millimeter debut of the entire Studio Ghibli catalog at Museum of Modern Art. I'm like, I am here. I am where I belong. But I had to get a job, and Anime News Network, I'd kind of given that up because I was 18, 19 and didn't know what I was doing. So long story short, I ended up on a plane seated next to John O'Donnell of Central Park Media. And he's friendly. I knew who he was. And as soon as he learned that I was running Anime News Network, we just talked each other's ear off the whole flight. And by the time we landed, I had a job.
Oh, wow. All right.
So the funny thing is, I was so excited because, this is this company that brought out Project AICO, Dominion Tank Police, Grave of the Fireflies. I'm like, yes. However, I had been on their screener list when I was at Anime News Network. And, mind you, I was still living with my parents, and they were sending me all of the crappiest, just worst hentai.
Do you remember some of the titles? Can we get some titles here?
Okay, so do you remember Cool Devices?
Kind of.
Okay, Cool Devices was like this anthology OVA series that was just kind of, it wasn't high budget or anything, but it was like really kind of high shock value for the time. Lots of S&M, lots of weirdness. Central Park Media didn't have that. They had the kind of runt spin-off series called Secret Anima. Yeah, and so they would just kind of release them as one-offs or two-offs. So they gave them titles like Twisted Tales of Tokyo and Foreplay and Mamma Mia!
Exclamation point.
They were awful. They looked like they were animated in Windows Paint.
I was never a hentai guy. At Animerica and Otaku USA, we obviously never covered that stuff. I mean, what was your sense of how big was it in the early days? Because I feel like now hentai is like it's a national pastime. Back then, how much of hentai was like driving the business for guys like John O'Donnell?
A lot. You had the big hits, but by the early 2000s, John O'Donnell and Central Park Media were pretty much priced out of the market for the good stuff. ADV had come along and they'd had some success and they were driving prices up, and they were frankly way better at marketing than a lot of the other guys. The Japanese owned studios like Pioneer, later Genion, and Bandai Entertainment, they were all kind of bidding prices way higher than honestly was justifiable. And John had kind of been left in the dust at that point. So the hentai was the way that he was keeping the lights on. What was funny is that part of the industry worked very differently. The sales channels were completely different. Most of them sold through to like the weird little creepy porn stores that you'd find at the outskirts of town. And because they didn't really care what was on those tapes or on those discs, they were priced literally like Japanese market almost, 30 minutes for $29.95, with the expectation that the retailer would chop like 75% off for actual sale. So it was just like this weird separate shadow ecosystem. I mean, it even had to be under a different corporate umbrella for banking and, business reasons. It was a weird thing. And so anyway, I called my mom after the plane lands. I'm like, Mom, I just got this job at Central Park Media. And she's like, wait a minute, isn't that the company that was sending you all that awful porn?
You had to have that conversation with your mom?
Smash cut to about a month later. I was Central Park Media's first in-house editor, video editor. Like this was the time of Final Cut Pro 1.0. And luckily I had already learned Final Cut Pro because I'm a giant nerd. So I was editing trailers, and some of the stuff CPM was putting out, oh God, I almost quit.
You mean Harmageddon? Are we talking about Rintaro's classic Harmageddon?
The hentai that they're getting at this point, because like the tentacle stuff is passe by then. At this point, we're getting like the really dark misogynistic like torture stuff. And I'm just like, it's stomach churning. The QC interns are barely making it through, and I'm just cobbling together. And eventually, my inner 12-year-old takes over and just kind of goes for, the jugular. So I'm like editing trailers for, let's go back to Mamma Mia, because I'm actually pretty like darkly proud of that trailer. And mind you, these dubs are atrocious. You must be my brother, right? I must be your brother. That sort of like quality.
Hentai dubs, man, that we are really in the Twilight Zone here.
Oh, man. So I was like, can I swear on this show?
Oh, sure. Yeah, by all means. The more the merrier.
So I put that together, and it starts off with like this kid, whacking off to the TV, and the voiceover is like, it's already been 1 week since my father passed away, but he told me about my stepmother. Cut to black. This like dark gothy music with minor key and like a sound effect of a woman crying. Text flies in this anime, Yuichi is going to fuck his mother.
Wow.
I just went for it.
Wow. Did you do the voiceover also for the trailer? Please tell me yes.
Oh, no, this was just text. We didn't have a budget. Mind you, this same job, I'm like having to do a 180 mentally, and then I'm editing the entire storyboard for Grave of the Fireflies and spending 3 weeks watching children die. So that company, it taught me a lot, but it was...
traumatic brain injuries.
I mean, I did start smoking, but I was also in art school in New York City, so I don't know how much to blame on Central Park Media for that.
I'm guessing you were at CPM, like what?
I was there late 2000 to 2003.
Okay. So there was something that happened, I think, when archaeologists look back at the history of the Earth. There was something called the DVD market crash that kind of impacted the ecology. What do you remember about that time? What led to the DVD crash? What were you doing? How were you affected as someone who was inside the industry at that time?
So I had fled because I kind of saw the writing on the wall. I was at a startup called Imagine Asian TV.
Okay.
Yeah, it was not a great company. I was working on this failed startup, but I was seeing what was happening. And, I was going to conventions still, and I was seeing people that I knew getting laid off left and right. And it was just, I was kind of baffled that the industry had existed at all at that point, because at that point, A, there was the worldwide recession. That was a thing. B, we were at a point where fan subs were beating professional product to market by 9 months to over a year, and in HD, where the DVDs were not in HD. So it's just like, why, just from a consumer point of view, it made no sense. And then I found out all the other stuff, like all the retail returns, all of the just absolutely stupid prices that were being paid as minimum guarantees. One thing I would do is I would get together with my friends that still worked at Central Park Media, and they still had access to Video Scan, the big, index of internal sales data. And we knew the CPM stuff wasn't doing all that well, but some of the numbers for like the ADV discs and for the Geneon releases, double-digit sales.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was abysmal. And, this is stuff that not only did they pay, probably 20, actually in some cases up to 70 grand an episode for, but then they were paying another like 5 to 10 grand to dub it. And it's just like, this is bad, guys. This is real bad. Something's going to blow. And sure enough, it did.
At the fandom level, there were still a lot of fans into the product. The audience is probably growing because of things like, Cartoon Network, Toonami. But there was like a disconnect between the fandom and like the business side. There were problems probably in distribution with like Blockbuster and Sam Goodies and all those crappy stores that people are nostalgic about now. Is that kind of the case?
With the benefit of hindsight and talking to the guys that were like really in the trenches at the time, I didn't fully realize how badly a lot of these studios, especially the smaller studios, were treated by those big chains. Imagine, you paid, however much to get the rights to a show, you paid to dub it, you paid to author it, you paid to have the replication done, you paid to ship all of this product over to these chains, and they'd be like, okay, we'll pay you in 90 days. and you wait, and 90 days go by, nothing. You call them, oh yeah, we'll get to you. 100 days go by, 120 days, and finally 180 days later, and you need this money to function, and you're out, and you have to make payroll. They go, oh, we can't afford to pay you, so we never put any of your stuff out on the shelves, so here's all of it back. We don't owe you anything now. Sam Goody and Transworld, they did that repeatedly. And this was exacerbated by certain companies. Their salespeople would have, deals with the buyers to overbuy their product so they could say they met their sales quota. That's how sales worked back then, Amazon killing everybody. Because those small publishers need those retail storefronts much more than the retailers needed them. It's like, they don't care about an anime that's going to sell, 5,000-10,000 copies. They care that they get the new James Cameron movie in. They'll pay Fox first, well before they pay, a small fry. So by then, most of the anime companies had joined up with a bigger distributor because they knew they could just never collect by themselves because they just had no leverage. But then, the distributors would get screwed by the big chains, and it was just one unmitigated clusterfuck.
I feel like after the DVD crash, manga became red hot, and that led to the great manga crash of I don't even know what year anymore. And then we enter kind of the era of streaming, and then
it's a weird time because, you have one very powerful company that controls 80-90% of the market. They're stretched too thin and they're letting things fall through the cracks. The anime space has been increasingly corporatized and does not feel like the mom and pop it used to. And the fans know that and miss the connection and mildly resent its lack. It's a weird time, but it's also a very good time to be a mom and pop.
Can you kind of talk a bit about how you got involved with AnimEigo and what your plans are? And to be a mom and pop in the era of the giant streamers, what's that like?
A couple years ago, I was working on this documentary series that you might have seen recently. My plan with that documentary was to make this super polished Netflix style, the toys that made us sort of thing. The bottom fell out of the streaming market for that sort of weird esoteric showbiz documentary, so that wasn't going to happen. But at the time, I was flying everywhere with a camera crew, just doing all these interviews. So I've arranged to do one with Robert Woodhead at Otakon, and this was 2023. And I wrapped the interview, and his wife Natsumi was just off camera keeping Robert on a very short leash. It was a good interview. We'll see it later. Afterwards, he said, hey, I'm looking to retire pretty soon. Would you be interested in running AnimEigo? And I went, yes. I was very worried because I had built a small company on just doing the production work for Discotek and a couple other companies, but it was mostly Discotek at that point. And so luckily, Selby, who runs Discotek, was just downstairs in the dealer room. So I just ran down there. I'm like, hey, Robert offered me AnimEigo. And he's just like, great, we can sell your stuff here at the booth. And I'm like, great, that's all I needed to hear. I quickly did an analysis over the next few weeks. And I'm just like, well, they don't have that many titles left, but the name means a lot, especially to the old timers. And we hashed out a deal, and we both got our, had to find new entertainment lawyers, and it was really a complicated dance, and it took about 6 months to fully hash it out. And then April last year, I officially was AnimEigo, and that was weird and terrifying, and still is. The first thing to do was to reissue all of the old AnimEigo stuff. That Blu-ray was not their specialty. It is my specialty. We've done over 1,600 retail Blu-rays over our careers as MediaOCD, my company. So, since I had to move to my replicator anyway, I'm just like, well, might as well just redo these discs. So I've been slowly reissuing the titles that AnimEigo had left. But I also have, gone out on a limb and licensed a few new titles. So, we have Bubblegum Crisis. We have, Riding Bean, we have Vampire Princess Miyu coming out, but also I've been licensing Nasu, like I mentioned. I have Nobody's Boy Remy coming out on Blu-ray.
Very underrated series. That's an Osamu Dezaki classic.
Oh, it's so good. It's so sad. When I put it out in Imagination, I had no idea it was in 3D.
Yeah, it's like multi-plane animation. Everything's like the foreground and the background, everything's kind of like whizzing around.
Right.
They use that effect a lot in Cobra, Space Adventure Cobra.
Right. And that's why Dezaki was kind of the right person for that job. But also, it was literal 3D.
Wait, so like glasses 3D? I remember seeing posters, Japanese anime posters for Remy, and it said in 3D. And when I finally saw Remy, I just thought they were referring to the crazy-ass multiplane animation. When you saw it in theaters in Japan, they gave you the glasses, like the creature from the Black Lagoon?
Not in theaters, on TV. It is the only 3D animated TV show in history worldwide. And, of course, it's like the saddest show ever made. So you might remember, this is a deep cut, especially for us nerds. Do you remember the 1989 Super Bowl halftime show that was in 3D and they made a big deal out of it? And it's awful. Look it up on YouTube. I can't believe this existed. It was literally an Elvis impersonator.
Oh man, this sounds great.
It's awful. But there's a type of 3D that isn't like the stereoscopic 3D that we're used to. What it is anything that's moving horizontally, there is a delay in how the brain processes the optic nerves between the eyes. And so if you dim one eye, anything that's moving horizontally takes on depth. And how deep depends on the speed and the direction.
This is like some Videodrome shit. I'm pretty sure this will make your head explode, or like you can stick VHS tapes in your stomach after this.
It is wild. So you watch those stereoscopic, multiplane animation with these 3D glasses, and they're very simple 3D glasses. It literally just dims one eye, but it is absolutely 3D. Now, I can't imagine watching 51 episodes like that, but it's a pretty cool effect.
So you're reissuing it in 3D with AnimEigo?
We are literally including the glasses, but you don't need them. If you don't have the glasses, it just looks like you'd expect.
Okay. Huh. All right. Far out.
Yeah. So I have that coming. I have Full Moon Asagashite, which we're calling Looking for the Full Moon, which is the official English title that I don't know why Viz didn't use back in the day. That's another great show that is unexpectedly sad, but also for kids. Romeo's Blue Skies, and we also just announced the Dazaki Blackjack OVAs.
Cool. Wow, lots of Dazaki. You mentioned a little earlier doing a restoration, and I did want to talk as a video nerd myself. What kind of materials do you get from a Japanese licensor, and what do you do on the restoration end to kind of bring it to market?
Oh man, it's all over the place. Ideally, if it's a vintage show that was shot on film, we get to scan the film or have somebody scan the film for us in either 2K or 4K. The technology to scan film to digital has come so far in the last 10 years. You can get levels of detail off of a negative now that were just unthinkable. And you can still see all that detail in 2K. Like, there's not really that much there, but 4K is like, that's how you know you've got everything. So we get the raw scan, and usually it's like sprocket hole to sprocket hole. We have to figure out, how to frame it for video, cut off all the crap that they didn't mean for us to see. And then we have to, there's a very, very expensive piece of software I have called Phoenix, which is a film restoration software that is literally going frame by frame through the film and finding all the dirt and scratches and trying to remove them. And the automatic process that does that, really not meant for animation. It really doesn't do a great job figuring out what's noise and what's supposed to be there. You know how anime works. It's like, those frames viewed one at a time, sometimes it's just completely wild where things go. You can't really track those things that are moving. So oftentimes, especially if it's animated on ones, I have to go through and literally Photoshop out each little speck of dirt. It's painstaking.
So that's in the case if you're getting film, but if you're not, let's say you get something that was only available like in standard definition. How do you bring that to like HD or Blu-ray?
So let's talk about Digimon. Digimon's a great example. We did that for Discotek, and that was animated on D2 composite video. So if you watch it on a modern TV, it looks rough. Like there's that kind of more rainbowing effect that happens with all these tight lines, lots of dot crawl, and it's just very soft looking. We have a number of techniques to sharpen it up and get out all that gunk. We've been using a process a lot called AstroRes, which is actually kind of a black box to us. We don't really know how it works, but it does use machine learning. We have all these denoiser plugins and just this bag of tricks that we throw at it and just kind of pick apart to see if it works or caused, some unintended consequence. And then we cobble together the best quality anything we can put together, and that's our master.
What I see happening in Japan more and more is AI restorations, right? Recently, they did the Macross movie. I guess that was a 5K restoration. And then I don't know who did the Interstellar 555 Daft Punk restoration, but that was also AI. I mean, what are your thoughts on AI digital restoration?
Well, I think like anything else, it's a tool. People these days are conditioned to hate AI for obvious reasons, but I think for art restoration, it can be incredible. We've been able to use AI to get detail out of things that just are not visible with the naked eye, but it was in the original. That said, it's a blunt instrument. It's really easy to overuse. And if you're not extremely careful with both what you put into it and what you're doing with it, you can really screw things up. I think there are no bad tools, only bad people using the tools.
Are you talking about the guys who did the Daft Punk anime specifically?
Yes. I can't believe that anyone released that, honestly. And had they literally just known to check the Japanese DVD, they could have literally ripped the Japanese DVD and gotten a better result. But they just put out that frame blended mess, and it gives all restoration a bad name. It really does. I don't even care about that OVA, and it made me mad.
Yeah, I'm a little worried about the AI era of restoration. It used to be Japan would do a new 5.1 sound mix, right? And that would just be enough for a re-release. But now it's got to have the AI seal of approval on it to get it back into theaters.
Well, it's a marketing buzzword and people move in hives. But the thing to remember is that a lot of the stuff that could easily be remastered already has been. Do you have the old Blu-ray of Do You Remember Love?
Yes, I have one of them. They re-released it like every couple of years for a while there.
Yeah, it's really grainy. There's that one scene of like the ship being like slowly revealed in space at the beginning, and you literally can't tell what's grain and what's detail.
I also can't tell what's just like a dirty cell. Does that make sense? I found that old Macross movie transfer just really inconsistent. Sometimes it would look great. Sometimes it would look really bad.
I know that restoration has been controversial, but I'm going to defend that one simply because what is visible on, and I didn't really realize this until the last time I pulled out that old Blu-ray, probably a good 40% of that film was actually shot out of focus. And that actually wasn't all that unusual at the time. Nausicaa has the same problem. And you can denoise it and, do whatever to clean it up, but it's still out of focus. In general, the literal animation camera was out of focus. Like I said, it was pretty common back then because, even watching it in the theater, it was like several generations down. It wasn't that sharp. You would probably not notice. But now that everything is a pristine 4K from the negative, you can see all of that. You can hide nothing. So did the AI make it perfect? No. I think it kind of reached a halfway uncanny valley that unfortunately didn't mask how out of focus those shots are very well, but it's still a little better than the input.
Well, they can remake the whole film, can't they? Shoji Kawamori's still alive. They can reanimate everything, right?
I'm sure people that can draw all those planes and battles like that still exist and are alive.
I had a question from a listener who found out that you were going to be on, so check this one out.
I work in exhibitions and marketing at a small indie cinema and was very recently trying to track down the distribution rights to the anime Cat Soup, which led me to an old thread on a forum about Justin and John O'Donnell. So I'm wondering if they still own the rights to it and plan on a restoration/re-release, and if they're able to say anything about it.
I certainly don't own it. I actually tried to get it, but I was told that someone else got it. Whatever transpired happened very recently, so it will be coming from someone, not me. I don't know who. I wish I did.
Sounds good. That was the question. I think that was the interview. Do you have anything else you want to plug or say before we log off?
Well, if you really want to support what we're doing and all the weird restoration and digging into the past of anime history that we do, I would beseech you to visit MediaOCD.com. Every sale directly from the website. First of all, our own titles, you get a exclusive slipcover, but more importantly, we get a lot more revenue if you buy direct, so we really appreciate the people that do.
Okay, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Sign up for Pure Tokyoscope Patreon. You'll get access to full episodes, bonus video content, our Discord server, and an archive of past episodes. Head over to patreon.com/Tokyoscope Podcast to subscribe today.